This podcast is sponsored by PROPERTYMARK, the professional body and regulator for estate and letting agents, commercial property agents and auctioneers. Search PROPERTYMARK Protection to find an expert who understands your local property market. Hello and a very warm welcome back to episode 3, season 6 of the Move IQ Property Podcast. Really great to have you with us. We've got a great, big, deep topic to explore today, and I'm pleased to say that we've got Nathan Emerson, CEO of PROPERTYMARK, back in the hot seat. Nathan, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. This really is a big topic, I think. And because selling a house is not something people do very often, they don't become experienced at it. And there's an awful lot that can go wrong, but there's an awful lot, if people are informed and they're guided and they're helped and they do it properly, that they can avoid problems and they can speed the process. There is a lot that can go wrong, and it can start right at the beginning, can't it? They get ahead of themselves so often.
Absolutely, and I think let's not forget. I think you hit it absolutely right. Most people don't move all the time, so it is a rare experience, and it's also an emotive and an emotional experience very often, unless you're a professional landlord, for example. But for most people, it's just an emotional driver that's behind it. They've seen somewhere, they need to move for a set reason, and so the emotions often take over. And actually, this is very often where a lot of agents try and help people slow down a bit, because it is all in planning and preparation. Yeah. If you are able to move yourself into the mindset to understand the process before we even begin the journey, it makes things a lot easier. And also helping, I think, to get those key things together, getting the property in order, making sure that it's clean, it's presentable, and also understanding the whole journey. And it's almost like, I always look at it like going upstairs, really. You know, if you can't work out how many stairs you've got to go up, but, is it 13 stairs on a standard flight, or are we running up a turret with 200 stairs? You need to understand how that journey looks, and very often that's the information that the good agents will try and work with people over, really.
Look, can we just kind of talk people through, if you like, the types of things that a good agent would advise a seller to do before the property goes on the market? So as you say, you've got to prepare your property, you've got to declutter, make it all smart, prepare the photographs, that kind of thing. But behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the one thing people forget, buying and selling is an emotional journey, and it has its highs and it has its lows. And if you sat down with somebody and said, this is how your emotions are going to go through the transaction, they would probably have a heart attack. And there are key bits. There's excitement when it goes on the market. There's the first viewing. There's the excitement when you get your first offer. There's a deflation when the second offer is not quite as high as you wanted it to be. There's a euphoric feeling when you agree a sale. Then we've got the emotional stress of the sale going through. And then finally, we've probably got relief when it finally exchanges and completes. And it is a roller coaster journey. And one of the most stressful things people could do in their lives, it's very true when people say that, because it's not a quick thing. It's also, because of our housing transaction position, you're probably in a 6-month journey, end to end, and can be longer. So depending on the marketing period and the conveyancing period. So it is a long drawn out process if you're not schooled through that all the way through and given the information at the time you need it to prepare. And when you look to a property, most people's natural reaction is, I'll get it out, I'll get a valuation, I'll get it on the market, and they rush that part of the journey. And this is probably where good estate agents will actually take that breath, and they'll talk the person through what the expectations are. They'll spend time with them looking at the property, thinking, well, actually, for a little bit, if you did this, if you did that, and we move this around, that will probably help you showcase the property in its true light. You wouldn't go out to a wedding in the scruffiest of clothes. You'd put yourself in a smart, presentable environment, and that's exactly what you need to do when you're doing your property. It doesn't have to cost money. It's preparing it, and it's preparing yourself. So an agent will spend a lot of time on that.
What about the paperwork and preparing, getting your solicitor ready, and the deeds and your finances and any paperwork that might support works that you've done, or planning permissions or building control, that kind of thing?
Again, very, very important part of the journey. I mean, we obviously produce a sales protocol, which we encourage people to get copies of the land registry title there, all the receipts, the guarantees, property information questionnaire where we're working through all the questions that are going to come up when you instruct a solicitor looking to sell. So
they're going to come up anyway. If you want to sell your house or your flat, you're going to be moving. Get the questions to start with.
Well, you're better off doing it now because when a property hits the market, there's a time frame till it's sold. Yeah. You're better off using that framework to iron out any problems that come up from that initial information grab. Yeah. If there are boundary disputes, if there are any issues with that, can be ironed out before you get a buyer on board. So when you get that buyer, it's a quicker transaction, reduces cancellation rates. It makes a big difference.
I've described it as you don't want to be doing those nitty gritty, finding bits of paper and sorting. You don't want to be doing that in the heat of battle when you're actually focused on the negotiations and the intensity of that. You want to have got it all dealt with.
100%. And let's be honest, most people aren't just dealing with a sale. They're trying to deal with a purchase as well.
Of course.
And so you're double whammy, really. Yes. And so a good agent will work with you to do that. We'll make sure you've got a good solicitor involved from the very, very beginning so that they can start that preparation and work through. So when you've got a buyer, you can hand out that contract and it will have all the requisite information that's needed. It'll have a filled-in TA6 form. It'll have everything that you need in order to help your buyer move through that process quickly. And finances are the other thing you spoke about, Phil. That is probably the most important part because if you haven't got the money, you can't buy. And most people forget that. They worry about the mortgage when they found something.
As you said right at the beginning, people get excited at the beginning. It's really exciting and you want to get on with it and whoopee. But actually there's a lot of things that you need in place. I've been amazed representing clients buying flats in London in the past, and the vendor or the agent doesn't know the length of the lease, doesn't know the service charged, might know who the freeholder is. And you think, I'm trying to make a big decision here. Information is lacking.
But equally, you've got to also question, how did they arrive at the valuation when they didn't have those component parts? Yes. The length of the lease is very, very important, especially people are reliant on mortgage finance because, you get different lenders have slightly different thresholds, but all of a sudden you get to a certain level where the lenders won't even lend on them. So, the value is tied into the length of a lease and the ground rent and the management charges. They all form part of that picture. And if you haven't got oversight of that picture, how do you actually fairly assess that property in the first place?
Nathan, I'd be interested in your thoughts on the finances and on when working with an agent to set the asking price, because that is probably the most crucial bit to get right as a seller, is choosing the right agent, setting the right price. Don't pitch it too high, don't pitch it too low. What are your thoughts on that?
So let's be honest, everything comes down to two things, supply and demand. And also the one thing everybody forgets, everybody worries about price, what's my house worth, bricks and mortar, what's the value of my house? Price and timescale are tied in to each other massively. Yeah. And for example, if you want to get something from A to B fairly quickly and you want a shorter timescale, then you're more likely to keep the price realistic. If you have a property to sell and you're not in a worry, you're not in a rush, you haven't found anywhere, you just know you want to change, then time is a different issue. So you can afford to try the market at a higher price because if the market is in a stage where it's rising, even if you got the price too high in the first place, the market eventually gets there anyhow. You can always come down, you can't go up. So a good agent will talk to you about what is it you actually want to achieve, not just on price, but also on timescale. Yeah. Even when you start that journey, what we've got to assess is it could be 6 months down the line. That might be a different time of the year, obviously, and you've got to weigh that factor up. So no, the price and the time is intrinsically linked, and people often don't realise that really. It's subjective, and price is emotional as well. If I want it and somebody else wants it, I'm probably going to pay more for it. It's as simple as that.
Which kind of opens up the topic of negotiations and dealing with offers and choosing the right buyer at the right price. Because again, there's an awful lot of variables in who you sell to, isn't it? And it obviously time and money, but there are other things.
Absolutely. And again, it's a natural inclination. How much are they offering? What price are they offering? Oh, he's offering me more money. I'll go with him. Yeah. A lot of it does come into as a seller. What do I need to achieve? Have I found something? Have I not found anything? So again, it's about the position that buyer is in as much as the financials. So the financials are important, of course they are, is they're offering the right realm. But if you've got two buyers at a similar level and one's in a long chain or needing to move very, very quickly, and one has time and you've not found anywhere, you might be better off with the guy that's not going to pressurize you on time but has the ability to buy. And equally, you could be in a situation where you need to move very quickly and you need somebody that's going to push it through. Or if it's a long chain, you need a shorter chain because you're looking to buy on. So the nature of the buyer is as important as the seller. And so you would be encouraged really to not just review the buyer and their offer, but review their circumstances, review the timescales, review the risk factor with each individual buyer. Because when you make a decision, everybody else goes off and buys somewhere else. So you need to make sure you've got the buyer that suits your circumstances as much as necessarily the price if there's a slight variance.
Really, really good advice, Nathan, and very eloquently put, because it is so true. And I'm always trying to assess the commitment of a seller and the commitment of a buyer. Are they really, if I'm gonna go for this, then I want to do business with someone that is equally committed. Otherwise, I'm going to be on the back foot a little bit.
Correct, and it's not a small financial commitment when you agree to sell your house, or buy a house. Let's be honest. Either way, you've got conveyancing costs, you've got probably stamp duty, you've got finance costs, you've got a whole revenue generation for the economy that's out there, and you're starting that journey committing to a lot of expense. If that sale doesn't go through, it's gone. Simple as that.
Together with your emotions.
And your emotions.
But let's move on a step through the process. And let's say, okay, you've accepted an offer as a seller, you've made an offer and had it accepted as a buyer, and so that chain is coming together. But managing that chain is so difficult at the moment and so delicate. And in my opinion, the role of the estate agent, and I'm not belittling an estate agency at all, but in this market, it's not difficult to sell a house. Open the door, 5 people will walk through, one of them will make a half a sensible bid, you can get a price out of someone. But the real skill is in brokering that chain, keeping everybody together, because it's so delicate and there's a lot at stake.
That is exactly the way to look at it, Phil. And I often explain it to people that probably haven't moved very often. I explain it in a slightly similar format. And I will often say to people, imagine somebody's going into theatre for, heart surgery. You can have a nurse that maybe prepares and you have somebody that makes the first incision. They're not the people that you'd have operating on your heart, which is where the real specialism is. If your heart doesn't beat, nothing else happens. And that's exactly the same with a sale transaction. We can agree the sale. We can mark out where we're going to make the cut. We can start the ball rolling. We can send our confirmation letters out. We can start the process. But if that heart doesn't continue to beat through that transaction, it all falls to pieces. And so the real skill with agents is not always the marketing and the advertising that they're seeing for and who's got the cheapest fee and who's going to get me the most price. What you're actually paying for is the guy that's sealing your heart up. And most of us, if we went for a heart operation, wouldn't pick the cheapest surgeon. We'd probably go by their track record with a success rate, and the price that we pay them is the last thing on our mind. We want to get that through to the other end. And yet, day in, day out, you'll see people choosing an estate agent based on who's offering me the highest price, who's going to do it for lowest fee, rather than who's going to still have my heart beating at the end of the day.
and day in, day out, you see deals collapsing because buyer or seller gets principled. And they, I'm not doing this, I'm not doing that. That's so delicate, and it happens so often.
And a good estate agent is actually more of a counsellor than anything else. And let's not equally, lose sight of the fact that the estate agent is the only person with complete overview of a chain and everything that's going on. And it's amazing how many buyers and sellers will sometimes try and work outside of the box of the agent. The agent is seeing what's happening on the conveyancing side from both sides of the fence. They know what's happening on the finance side. They're talking to the mortgage advisors, they're talking to the buyers, they're talking to the sellers. They're the only people in that transaction that have overall clarity of what's going on. If there's a chain, they're talking to the other agents. The solicitors will only talk to each other. They're not involved with the financial advisors. The seller's list will only speak to the seller. The buyer's list will only speak to the buyer.
Yeah.
So you've got one person sat there that actually has complete oversight. And that oversight, combined with good skill, should hopefully maneuver everybody else into position, because they're all like blind people in a room. Somebody's got to coordinate them together and get them out through the door.
When you put it like that, it's amazing that any of these deals get through. It really is. I mean, I don't know what the current fall through rate is now, but it's about a third, isn't it, of deals that are agreed never come to fruition.
We've been through a period where the cancellation rates shortened massively, and people weren't cancelling for obvious reasons. They needed to buy and they were getting on with it. We're seeing cancellation rates hitting back to normal now, 25 to 30%. And that sounds a frightening statistic.
It does.
In one respect. And there are a number of factors at play for that, really. It can be people's decisions. It can be a change in circumstances.
Sure.
The length of time scale. The longer you're going from A to B, the more chance you've got of a sale falling through for whatever reason. So there's a lot of work being done to try and look at how we can bring that together quicker, really.
Yeah. Basically what you're saying, Nathan, and I don't blame you for it, is a good agent's worth their weight in gold.
Absolutely right.
Of course. You heard it here first. Great to talk to you. It is a really fascinating topic. And of course, it's so vital to people, whether you're buying or selling, to make the best of it, because it's not something you want to get wrong in today's world. Nathan, great to see you. Thanks for your time. Much appreciated.
Brilliant. Thanks, Phil.